Right, so moving forward, coming after VoLTE, obviously, we wanted to have a little bit of discussion on 5G as well. But I have to confess, I have cheated a little, which is, when you have something already great available, why, reinvent the wheel? So I've just taken a few of the slides from our ROCCO U course that we run in ROCCO on 5G. So there are just a few slides, and I also apologize if you have taken our 5G course, you may have seen some of these slides, but also some of these I have presented previously, but I'm forced to present it again, the very basics of 5G, because the questions I keep getting about, and this is a problem, all the hype that has been created about 5G, some of the basic stuff is completely lost. So I'm going to try and cover this very, very quickly all over again, but then move on to what actually is the state of 5G. Where are we with the adoption of 5G? So you'll see this in a flavor of our ROCCO U course that we have on 5G. But does anybody recognize this? Has anybody seen this? Maybe on TV, heard of this? Oh, I see. So the question obviously is, why is this historic? Any ideas? Well, maybe. Maybe. Well, there is a different reason. And I mean, one of obviously is that it is being done at the Westminster Abbey since 1066. That's even before I started in this industry. Can you imagine how far back that was? So, but we'll come to the answer. And this is a tradition of our ROCCO U courses as well. We have an initial question, which is quite interesting, but we don't give an answer. The answer comes at the end of the session. So trust me, it's a bit more related than the answers that we serve. So, but like I mentioned, what I'd like to do and what we mentioned in the opening of the session is peel the hype a little bit around 5G. There is still a lot of people trying to put numbers out there, trying to see that it's going to, like Matthew mentioned, how it's going to solve all the problems, and this kind of narrative, which actually does a lot of harm to our industry. So what I'd like to do is just start with what is 5G and how is it actually different. So the problem that we've had in telecoms is that we know human beings and how we react, although we all feel we are very different. But when it comes to mobile phone use, we're pretty much same. We all have the similar behavior, same use. And the thing is, now obviously the industry's got locked on to IoT. That's a big thing. That's where we need to go. But we have no idea how the profile from one device is different from another device. So the example I often use is, you imagine a pollution meter on a street, which is monitoring how much pollution is on the road, which sends maybe a few kilobits of data every day in the evening to a server somewhere. Or on the other hand, you have a high-definition security camera or maybe a broadcast event that is going on, which needs high-definition images. The profiles of these two devices is so completely different that it is not financially viable or feasible to have one network run it. So you probably want to use a Wi-Fi over one network, you want to use a 5G network for something else, you want to use a narrowband IoT network, but it's not possible for a company or a provider to have all these different kind of networks. Now, right from childhood, we've all been taught that you can't keep everybody happy. You can't please everyone. But unfortunately or fortunately, that's exactly what 5G tries to do. It tries to be all things to all people. So it's one network which can flex itself and bend depending on the requirements of the devices. So it can have a different profile or show a different face, if you will, to a small IoT device like a sensor or a probe. But if you want to have a big event, which is maybe broadcasting a football match, for example, it would have a completely different network, the same 5G network, but a different flavor of that is presented. So that's really why 5G is different, and the real challenges arise from that, because it's one network trying to be everything and trying to please everybody. So really the hype we see and what you're told about is what you see in this picture here, which is everybody using 5G on their handsets. But actually that is not what 5G is about. Most of the applications that we have today, we use on handsets. 4G is more than enough. Maybe new applications will come, which will be enabled by 5G. But primarily, this is what 5G is about. It's enabling the IoT marketplace. It's been designed for that. It's an all IP network designed really to support M2M and IoT. And in essence, actually, if IoT fails, then pretty much 5G fails. And if 5G fails, then there's a good possibility that IoT fails. And this is the first time that operators are actually having to look at, use a frequency in a more intelligent way. So we won't go too much in details, but you can see that there's, sub 1 gigahertz, 1 to 6 gigahertz is and above 6 gigahertz is the first time when we'll use, and this is where small cells and will come into the picture, and you get really, really high speeds. But a lot of this is dictated by actually physics, and you can use some frequencies in certain environments, and you can't use certain frequencies on certain environments. And we've been talking about 5G for so long that we think all of this is there, but actually a lot of this is still missing. And we'll come back into that. And this is what the spectrum profile actually looks like. This is kind of where 5G is right now, and you can see it's just before even the 5 gigahertz, the new Wi-Fi uses. And then, people often ask, what is 6G? Basically, 6G starts to get into these areas, but there's a lot of physical limitations that come with that, and just wanted to give you a flavor of how we're moving ahead and actually pushing the boundaries of physics in terms of how spectrum can be used for telecom. So in essence of deployments, you can see it is some of the big countries have already deployed 5G, and network services have been launched. The big bright blues are there. You can see kind of North America, over here South America as well, little parts of Asia. Africa, as you can imagine, is a bit behind, but Europe is also going ahead. But you can see 5G deployed in network and soft launch is very few. Planning and evaluating is quite a few. But if you move ahead, this is currently, and this has been sourced from GSA, and it's quite a credible source because they pick up their information by actual equipment manufacturers, so they know exactly what has been deployed. So there are about 524 MNOs in 155 countries who are just currently investing in 5G. 249 have launched, commercially launched, but this is NSA. Right? Only 115 MNOs are investing in 5G SA, and out of that, only 41 have actually launched 5G SA. So we have a long, long way to go. We're not there. What the hype tells you, where we are with 5G, that the whole world is changing, we're still miles away from that. We've heard of many things like network slicing, massive MIMO, but that is still far away. And coming back to Matthew's topic of VoLTE as well, 292 operators are currently investing in VoLTE, and 237 have already launched. But actually, if you look at private networks, which we never talk about or hardly ever talk about, there are about 1,077 organizations who are deploying private mobile networks based on either 4G or 5G. And this is kind of these new massive opportunities that we have, which I know some vendors and operators are talking about it. Some kind of are trying to understand. Some have not even heard what a private network is. Some think it's their Wi-Fi network at home. But that's the variance we have in the industry. So this slide was produced by Etsy in 2018, and this is where they thought we would be, right? And they thought that it's going to completely change the world. 5G is going to be everywhere, all different, self-driving cars, gigabit in a second, industry automation. This is as hyped up as you can get, especially coming from Etsy. But in reality, we are still very, very far away from this picture. And the question is, when will we actually get there? And for that, we need to kind of get back to our basics and understand what is actually happening rather than just be driven by hype. And again, like Matthew is working, there's also a 5G roaming lab with an IO, which will also be kind of working on that. And we have an executive board, an IO, and an advisory board who will also grappling with these things, trying to peel away the hype and say, in reality, this is where we are and this is what we should be doing. So coming back to the question right at the end of my slides, why is this historic? Because actually this was the first time that a private network slice was created by Vodafone in the UK, and that is what was used to actually broadcast all the images on a 5G standalone network, which was dedicated for ITN, and that's how the images went to the ITN studio, and from there it will broadcast to the rest of the world. So on one hand, I gave you a little bit of a negative image that nothing is really happening and we're far away, but also there are actual examples of where we've seen a real example of a very successful and a huge event across the world where 5G SA network slicing was used very successfully. So that's it for 5G. Hopefully that gives you a flavor of all the challenges and the opportunities that we have ahead of us.